The topic of this talk is Cultural Marxism, the radical left's Trojan horse, or why values voters are crucial. Sun Tzu, the military strategist from the 6th century BC, said, "To win 100 victories in 100 battles is not the acme of skill. To subdue the enemy without fighting is the acme of skill." He also said, "All war is based on deception." Well, in America we've had radical cultural change over the past 60 years. Was our culture just evolving? Was this change natural, or was it given a shove? The change involved such things as the gay agenda, radical feminism, sex education, the divorce epidemic, sexual liberation, illegitimacy, abortion, advances in atheism and secularism, racial tension, multiculturalism and balkanization, and the drug culture, just to name a few radical cultural changes. Here's an example, the gay agenda. Here we have the 1950s idea of marriage, a man and a woman. Now in 2010, 2012, we have men getting married, and we have the forced inclusion of gays openly serving in the military with the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. The big question is, what would Washington, Eisenhower, or Patton say about this? And here again is the 1950s idea of mom at home in the kitchen. Fast forward 60 years, we have radical feminists here demonstrating in the nude, and we have this young lady who is testifying before Congress, seeking to force institutions, faith-based institutions, to pay for her abortifacients and contraceptives. That's a pretty radical change. We have sex education, or as I like to say, let's sex up the children, destroy their modesty, and disguise it as education. So here we have a teacher. This poor kid looks like he wants to drop through a hole in the floor. These girls aren't quite sure what to think of what's going on here. How did our American founders ever get by without this crucial learning? And then there's the radical change of the divorce epidemic. Starting in 1960, divorce is not that common. Here in 2008, divorce is at least 3 times more common. And we have sexual liberation. Our homegrown cultural anarchists, Alfred Kinsey, starting in the 1950s, and also Hugh Hefner. There's also been a rise in illegitimacy. Compare the difference between the 1940s and 2000. Radical increase in all groups in illegitimacy. Abortion, another big cultural shift, starting with the legalization of abortion in 1973, skyrocketing abortion rates. The latest data here are 2005. This is really neo-paganism. Compare this with the prevalence of infanticide, especially killing of baby girls in ancient Greece and Rome. A haunting similarity. And atheism, secularism, and paganism are on the move. Again, starting in the 60s with this cover of Time magazine, Is God Dead? And now we have modern atheists that are very aggressive and in your face about their atheism, sponsoring websites, billboards. I call this a giant step backwards to pre-Christian morality. We even have Facebook pages entitled F. Jesus Christ. Here's an example. There's racial tension. There's always been racial tension, but it seems to have escalated lately. We have Al Sharpton calling for escalation of the demonstrations and pressure in the recent Trayvon Martin shooting. Here's an opposing point of view that you'd probably never see in the mainstream media. This is Pastor Jesse Lee Peterson, and I quote him. He says, "I've said for the last 22 years that most black Americans are brainwashed. The recent actions of these black leaders and their followers are not about justice. It's about getting even with whites and gaining political power. This is black hatred of white people and a result of more than 50 years of brainwashing by racist civil rights leaders. It's unfortunate that the parents of Trayvon Martin would associate with the likes of Al Sharpton and allow their loss to be exploited. Just imagine the support they would receive from Americans of all races if they rejected hate and called for calm and due process to allow the truth to come out." What are the chances that you'd ever see this gentleman, Mr. Peterson, in the current mainstream media? Very slim. We also have radical change in terms of multiculturalism and balkanization. This is the old model of America, where you have assimilation, also known as e pluribus unum, people of many nationalities coming to America and becoming Americans. Note all these nationalities becoming Americans and being assimilated. This quote by Teddy Roosevelt will give an example of how radical the change has been. Roosevelt said, "In the first place, we should insist that if the immigrant who comes here in good faith becomes an American and assimilates himself to us, he shall be treated on an exact equality with everyone else. But this is predicated upon the person's becoming in every facet an American and nothing but an American. There can be no divided allegiance here. Any man who says he is an American but something else also isn't an American at all. We have room for but one flag, the American flag. We have room for but one language here, and that is the English language. And we have room for but one sole loyalty, and that is a loyalty to the American people." Well, times have changed in this regard too. For example, there is MECHA, M-E-C-H-A, the Chicano student movement of Aztlan, a Hispanic separatist organization that encourages anti-American activities and civil disobedience. The radical members of MECHA refer to themselves as Mequistas and romanticize Mexican claims to the quote-unquote lost territories of southwestern United States, a Chicano country called Aztlan. So there it is. There's Aztlan. Here's San Antonio. There's Los Angeles. These are, according to these folks, occupied areas of Mexico. Wow. Here's another example. Iraqi Muslim immigrant Faleh Hassan Amaleki was convicted of honor killing his daughter in April 2012. He was found guilty of second-degree murder for running over his daughter, a crime motivated, prosecutors said, by the Arizona Muslims' belief that the 20-year-old daughter had become, quote-unquote, too westernized. So if you have the Quran in this situation, it's a hate crime, but if you have the Holy Bible in this situation, it's considered art. Here's another example of multiculturalism. June 12, 2012, Greta Hawkins, principal at PS 90 in Brooklyn, New York, banned the Lee Greenwood song God Bless the USA, also known as Proud to be an American, from a kindergarten graduation ceremony. The Post reports 5 classes at the elementary school spent months learning the patriotic song in anticipation of performing it at the ceremony, but Hawkins canceled the performance, allegedly saying she didn't want to offend other cultures. But Hawkins will allow the Justin Bieber song Baby to be performed at the June 20th commencement, CBS News reports.